Vikings mail call for the week of September 30th. I'm Tom Moore from VikeFans.com, and I'm joined by former Minnesota Vikings linebacker and coach, Pete Bercich. Pete, all I can say is, wow, what a great upset win for the Vikings out at TCF Bank Stadium last Sunday.
Yeah, it was. It was a great win, and Teddy's the talk of the town right now. Yeah, it was exactly what this team needed, and the way in which they went about doing it was great too. I think the defense had a good day. I wouldn't call it a great day. They had made too many mistakes, but the offense really bailed them out. I mean, and for an offense that had going into that game hadn't scored in 7 quarters, they scored a touchdown in 7 quarters. That's huge for it's huge for the confidence of defense to be able to have faith in the offense that they're going to keep them close.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, if your Twitter feed after Sunday's win is any indication, it looks like you're all in on the Teddy Bridgewater bandwagon. What I wanted to know from you is, what are your impressions of that 317-yard passing performance, and is he the real deal at quarterback? In other words, what does he do that past quarterback candidates in Minnesota haven't been able to accomplish?
Well, I think if you look at him just from a tool standpoint, he has a much stronger arm, I think, than anybody that we've seen here in quite some time. And especially compared to Christian Ponder, he also moves very well in the pocket. But he's not moving or scrambling to run; he's moving or scrambling to throw the football. And you pair that up with North Turner and a bit of a read option, and the read option they were running. I mean, they were optioning the end, but it wasn't an option for the quarterback to either hand it off or run it. It was either hand it off or throw it. And, I don't think Atlanta was properly maybe prepared for that. But he just did such a nice job in the pocket. And early on, they kept his throws short, and Jarius Wright helped him out with a big run. And I think Jennings helped out with maybe a slant or two. And as the game went on and he got more comfortable, they started taking shots, further and further down the field. And I've always said this about rookie quarterbacks is you can live with a rookie quarterback as long as you see, flashes of brilliance. I mean, you go back to Peyton Manning or Eli Manning or any of these guys that had, during their rookie years, even Andrew Luck, they'd have games where they struggled, but at times they had games where they were just fantastic. And, Teddy already has shown what his potential is. I mean, the kid's only 21 years old. He should still have a year or two of college left at that age. If he went to BYU, he'd still have, he would be another 4 or 5 years before he got into the league. So at his age, to be as poised as he is, and to be able to run the offense as well as he did, it's just very impressive.
Well, you talked about the offense, and obviously they were pretty mundane the last couple of games, and then they exploded for that 559 yards and showed a really powerful running game all of a sudden. Pete, how much of that is the Viking success was a result of a good game plan by North Turner, and how much of it was a result of that porous Falcon defense?
I think it's, again, a little bit of both. I mean, you look at the option play again that they were running. It really allows offensive linemen to just form a wall and get downfield. I think it really helped Khalil out quite a bit to be moving forward instead of moving backward all the time. Matt Asiata, he had a couple nice runs, but nothing huge. And it was Jerick McKinnon who came out and had a couple really explosive runs, which was nice to see. I mean, going into the game, he only had 7 yards on 5 attempts, and then to put up the day that he did was very impressive. So, you want to see certain spots where these young guys, especially. Step up and stand out, and we had 2 of them. We had Jerick McKinnon stand out. We had Teddy Bridgewater stand out, and I think Anthony Barr is starting to stand out too. I mean, you can't forget about him. I mean, he's been playing this whole time, but he's very quickly becoming an impact player. He's very, very physical, which I thought would be tough for a guy his size. But so he's just a great athlete, and he's just so physical at that position. It's impressive.
And he's probably only just scratched the surface, hasn't he?
Yeah, I mean, I look at him too as another guy who, as a young guy that is going to end up being 265, 270 by the time it's all said and done. And if he could still play stand-up linebacker, then yeah, he might be the next Brian Urlacher.
Yeah, well, that wouldn't be a bad heritage to have here, huh?
No, I wouldn't. We'll take it.
Yeah.
Although he'd be a better pass rusher than Urlacher.
That's true. Well, you mentioned McKinnon. I'm curious. He looks slight, but he's actually 210 pounds. Does he have the kind of size to actually be the primary runner out of the backfield?
I think that'll come with some time. I think he's got the toughness, the intelligence to be a third down style of back. He has some physical development that he needs to do. He needs to get a little bit bigger and stronger. And I think in that respect, it comes in the form of durability. Unfortunately, Jarek and Teddy made big impacts during the game, but they also came out of the game a little bit nicked up. And in the NFL, you have 16 games, and you got to be healthy for all of them. I think we're all familiar with Chris Cook and the struggle that he had, and a lot of that had to do with the fact that he only played in half the games in his first 4 seasons. So he never had a chance to really stay out there and play and learn and develop and, take it to the next level. So hopefully for both those guys, they'll be able to play Thursday. But this is the NFL. And, for Teddy, the bad side is he's, whatever expectations were, they're even higher now. And it's always a what have you done for me lately league. So, he's going to have a lot of pressure Thursday night.
Well, he had a little help on Sunday when Jarius Wright stepped up with that 130-yard receiving effort. Should we expect to see Wright more in the offense? And, to that same extent on the wide receivers, why is Cordero Patterson failing to be a bigger part of this offensive game plan since week 1?
Well, on the Jarius Wright side of things, number one, it's about time. And number two, we absolutely have to. I mean, we're very, very thin at that position, very thin. When you lose a guy like Rudolph, who's probably even your second, maybe third best receiver, you got to have those bodies. And Jarius Wright, by default, became number 3. Well, he played very well, and see, that's the advantage of being a number 3. I mean, if Cordero Patterson's attracting all this attention, and it makes sense that he would attract attention against the Falcons, because when the Falcons came to town, they felt that the one guy that could beat him is probably Cordero Patterson. They had no idea what Teddy could do. He really didn't get, he didn't play anywhere near like this in the preseason. So they concentrated on Cordero. Cordero's he's still a young man too. He still has some developing to do as well. I think in that respect, they paid Cordero a lot of attention. Jarius Wright was a beneficiary of that. And, that's because Teddy knew what to do with football.
Yeah. Well, I want to ask you something about that, something that happened before the game actually began. And Coach Zimmer read a motivational message from suspended running back Adrian Peterson. And I'm curious what your thought is on this action. Does it really fire up the troops, or is it better to focus the attention on the players that are there in uniform to play?
It depends on the message. And I think all those guys, feel for Adrian, and they know, what kind of a guy he is. And I know whether or not they're digging in to figure out, what happened in the different circumstances, with what Adrian experienced growing up and when he was, what was going on. So, depends on the message. And we didn't hear much of the content of the message, but I think for Adrian, he understands that, you can never take a minute of the game for granted, because it could be yanked away from you tomorrow, be it injury, be it something else. And I think those guys were all very happy to hear from Adrian.
Okay. Well, when we look at the defensive side of the ball, they actually played pretty well against that high-flying Falcon passing game. But a lot of fans are starting to get concerned about missed tackles, the propensity for not being able to get off the field on third downs, and even some of the blatant missed assignments in the secondary. Pete, how worried should we be about the lapses in the defense?
Well, that's, I'm not as worried about it or concerned about it as I was a year ago. This system's going to take a little time. So, you learn more from your mistakes than you do from the things you do right, no question about it, as long as they can continue to build on it. I mean, and you look at the third down situation, some of that, that is tackling. Some of it, Captain Munnerlyn's penalty with Drew Brees, that was a third down situation. I mean, there's been some other things mixed in. Does it have to get better? Absolutely it has to get better. But at the same time, you're getting interceptions. You have some younger people that are really stepping up, like Anthony Barr. Chad Greenway's been very limited. He's a big third down type influence. So Gerald Hodges is in there on third down as well, another young guy. I mean, his guy didn't play much of it all last year, who's, filling a bigger and bigger role with his defense. So there's going to be some growing pains. And as long as this defense continues to improve, and what's the great thing is I think the mental errors are the easiest things to fix. Physically when you're not tackling, doing things like that, then then that's the problem. I know that the big run that they gave up to Jones, Antoine Jones, and the tackle that Emerson Griffin tried to put on him was a little lame. It was just kind of a shoulder instead of trying to wrap him up. Those things need to get fixed, and tackling's effort. Tackling is bringing more than one guy to the ball, and it's a lot of those things as well. So that part of it is motivation. That part of it is getting guys in there, having fresh legs in there, and hopefully they can do that.
Well, I'll tell you what, a couple things that are nice is that defense, you don't worry quite as bad about injuries because you got a lot of nice piece components that are filling in, and it sure is nice to have a strategy versus hope on defense.
Yeah, it is, and that's kind of been Zimmer's MO, even when he was in Cincinnati, and I think for Zimmer, he's not interested in holding spots for guys who just play special teams. I think he wants guys that can play defense, and he did that in Cincinnati. He had a bunch of no-name kind of guys, and made them into some very, very good football players, and that's a sign of good coaching, a sign of a good system. We're seeing that. And you look at what we've gotten already out of Anthony Barr. You're looking at what you're getting out of Gerald Hodges. You're looking at how much the corners have improved, especially Xavier Rhodes. I mean, he has just gotten so much better. Fundamentally, he's improved so much. Those are all signs of good coaching. Sharif Floyd is making an impact. I mean, he played last year. He didn't do a whole lot from an impact standpoint when he was in, and we're seeing him show up. So these guys and that's how teams get good is by taking the players that you already have and making them better, and cultivating that talent. And look at Shamar Stephen and other guys like that they have that are making an impact is impressive.
Well, with all the good things going on, it's unfortunate the Vikings don't have a whole lot of time to enjoy that win as they play the Packers on a short week in Lambeau Field on Thursday night. And that may not be good news for the Vikings. In the first 4 weeks, the visiting team on Thursday nights, they've lost by an average of 28 points. What does the home team do to have such an advantage on these short week games? And are these non-competitive nature of the games a black mark in the NFL brand?
Well, I think a little bit. I mean, but the Giants-Redskins game, that was a Thursday night ordeal, wasn't it? Was it not?
It was.
That was that's the Giants coming down there and pounding the Redskins. I think there's a couple things to look at. I think the more veteran of the team that you have, the better, because they can do more and handle more on a short week. There's very little game plan that goes on. You kind of just bastardize your system from the week before. You pick and choose certain things that worked for you the week before. And may work for you again. I mean, fortunately for the Vikings, they're playing two similar offenses, not exactly the same, but so there can be a lot of carryover. I'm like you. I've looked at these Thursday night games, and I know I played in a couple of them. I got to play on a Thanksgiving Day in Detroit and in Dallas. It is an interesting week. It's a very quick week, but the games it's not very good quality football for whatever reason. Whether it be these guys are tired or the injuries or the lack of a game plan, or when you play on Thanksgiving Day, it's something to get up for. It's special. It's different. The whole country's watching. But now these Thursday night games are every single week. They've been division games too, which is the other part that makes it interesting, because you'll see teams that are scoring 30, 40, 50 points a game, but then they play someone in their own division and they usually struggle because of the familiarity that's there. So these are divisional games, and they haven't even been competitive. And I think the NFL needs to sit back and kind of reconsider this Thursday night product, because right now I think it's doing more harm than good. I mean, the ratings might be good, but the football certainly isn't. These games have not been competitive. They have not been what you see on Sunday. And so, why keep making these guys work on a short week when, it was a good idea. Keep it to Thanksgiving Day, have 3 games on Thanksgiving Day, and then move on. I really don't think Thursday night football is going to be with us for too much longer if the trend that we're seeing continues.
You mentioned not having a lot of time to put a game plan in, not a lot of time for reps. Looks like Teddy Bridgewater is going to get no reps as he's recovering from that ankle injury. He hasn't practiced in the last couple of days. Do you expect him to play on Thursday? And if so, how effective can he be when he hasn't worked out with his teammates executing that game plan in practice?
Yeah, that's the other thing is this week, with the short week, that you're not going to execute really anything full speed because you just can't. Everything's going to be a walkthrough, whether or not he was 100% or wasn't injured at all. Practice this whole entire week would have been a walkthrough, just because of the nature of the short week. So, in that respect, he's going to, that really hasn't affected him. Now, the question is going to be is how that thing feels come Thursday night. Again, for a young guy to come in and play like he did last week is impressive on a week's worth of practice. So we'll see. My expectations were definitely, he exceeded expectations for sure against the Atlanta Falcons in Bay, with more reserved expectations, I think. But, then again, this kid, who knows? I mean, I kind of did the same thing with Adrian Peterson. You just when you thought he couldn't outdo what he did the week before, you go ahead and do it. Is Teddy that's special of a talent? Well, if he plays lights out Thursday night, then you start really thinking that you have something. That you start thinking that this might be the franchise guy. It wasn't a one-hit wonder. It wasn't taking a team by storm. I mean, these first 3-4 weeks are very critical because now teams are preparing for him. They see film on him. They know what can give him problems. They're trying different things. Is anything going to work? Because if something works, you're going to see it for the next 3 weeks until you stop it. So again, if Teddy can come on in the big stage on Thursday, national audience, the whole thing, I think that would be unbelievable for the kid, to be unbelievable for the Vikings, and I just hope it goes that way.
You were obviously a player. What's it like out at Winter Park? You've done this 12 times against the Packers in your career. Is there extra focus and intensity, and do they really feel the rivalry?
Yeah, I think so, and I think the players, players are motivated a little differently than fans are. I mean, you live in Minnesota. We have our sprinkling of Packer fans, and these are people who, grew up in the middle of nowhere in Wisconsin and went to college because they don't want to work on farms, and then they decide they need to get a real job, so they move to Minneapolis and they bring all their Packer garbage with them.
Right.
So those people annoy the living hell out of you. You're not gonna hear it like the normal, like I do now when you go to work, and you always have to work with a couple of them. They're everywhere and deal with them. But there's absolutely a familiarity there. There's I'm not going to call it a hatred, but a dislike. No question about it. When you play any team twice a year and it's competitive, and the Packers have gotten the best of us, especially in Lambeau. Over the last couple of years, leaves a little bitter taste in your mouth. A couple of years ago, we win there, last game of the season, we go back in the playoffs, and then we lose. So you do, as a player, feel a little more emotion in a game like this. You ready yourself, because the game is important. It's a divisional game, so does it mean more than just a win or just a loss? Yeah, it does. So, those guys will be fired up. They'll be ready to go, and Green Bay will be the same, with us. They just got done taking care of the Bears. They think if they could take care of us, that's, 2/3 of the division that they've already got a game up on. So I'm sure they're going to be just as fired up as the Vikings are.
Well, over the past couple of years, that passive Viking Tampa 2 defense we had before Mike Zimmer got here, they just couldn't slow Aaron Rodgers down. If you were Mike Zimmer, what wrinkles would you employ to make Rodgers at least uncomfortable in the pocket and keep him out of rhythm?
Well, I think a lot of what they're doing now is working pretty well. I mean, you're playing a lot more man-to-man defense, and if the back is blocking, they're letting the linebackers go. You're challenging the receivers. I mean, you look at Julio Jones and some of the receivers from Atlanta. They were bigger wide receivers, and our corners, Robinson and Xavier Rhodes, did a very good job keeping up with them. You look back at the Patriot game when you have Edelman, some of those smaller guys. They struggled a little bit, and you look at the Packers, and Jordy Nelson's a bigger guy, but then Randall Cobb, who just came off 2 touchdown receptions last week, he's a smaller, shiftier style wide receiver. So how those guys match up one-on-one on the outside will be a big deal. I mean, Rodgers likes to spread the field out. He's very smart. He knows when you're blitzing and what to do with the football, but you just can't let him beat you deep, number one. Number two, you have to tackle these receivers because all of them, especially, Cobb and Nelson, they can both run very, very well after the catch.
Well, Pete, finally tonight, I wanted to talk to you about an experience you had in your playing career when you were with Minnesota. And in 1998, you had one of your best games as a pro when the Vikings went to Lambeau Field and crushed the Packers 37-24, and that was in front of a national audience as well on Monday Night Football that time. Most fans recall that as one of the greatest wins in franchise history, but I want to ask you, what do you remember about the game, and how confident were you and the teammates that you'd upset the Packers that night at their house?
Yeah. I mean, again, a division game, you're always confident. I remember that game because the Packers had a very, very long home winning streak. And then the other thing I remember is that it just wasn't even close. I mean, our offense just wore them out. Randy Moss wore them out. Randall Cunningham, Chris Carter, Jake Reed, all those guys. They just wore that Packer team out. And it was fun to play defense on a night like that because you kind of know what they're going to do. They're not they can't be very balanced. You can just kind of get in a rhythm, and but winning on that field on a night like that, when you were just sick and tired of hearing about the Packers and sick and tired of hearing about them at home and sick and tired of hearing about everything else. To go in there and not just beat them, but just roll them like we did, that was absolutely fantastic. It was probably my most memorable night in football, period. More so than even my first game that I played in, which was also at Lambeau Field. But it was probably, like I said, my most memorable night for sure, and probably my favorite night of football that I had ever played.
Well, I hope we find the recipe and repeat on Thursday night. And with that, we bring a close to another edition of Pete Bercich's Viking Mail Call. And don't forget to sign up to follow Pete on Twitter for his pregame thoughts. He tweets in the game as well. And you can also get his postgame analysis. And he can be found on Twitter at Pete Bercich. So until next week, for Pete Bercich, I'm Tom Moore. So long, everyone.